you should be able to just hit the record button.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Good. Okay. I won't interrupt you again. I'm going to pop out. So you're doing okay? It sounds like you're having a good conversation. Okay. Bye.
Trina, can I just tell you how sorry I am? I think that sounds really, really rough.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate the support. It's hard to, I think, for a lot of teachers under the teacher contract to understand. So I know you all understand how early childhood sometimes is a little bit unique.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I am hopeful that we can get something going for next year. Probably nothing will happen for us for summer. That's a given, but thinking ahead to what's next.
Yep.
In our meeting that was in Robbinsdale on Wednesday, we have parent educator, well, we have early childhood meetings on Wednesdays now. And we just kind of started creating a document with 3 scenarios on it so that we could, on this document, ask ourselves the questions that in the 3 scenarios. So those 3 scenarios are, A, we're coming back to school just as we always have. B, we're coming back as a hybrid, like maybe some people will be in the classroom and some people will be online. And C, we're completely remote as we are now, distance learning. So we're trying to do some planning for all 3 of those scenarios so that we can hit the ground running and deal with whatever we are given when we know more about that. And I think from what's being shared, I kind of wonder if we're even going to know until mid-August or, right before the school year starts. And so we're all hoping to have some resolve, but we might have to be content to not have that.
Don't you think, so right now we're at the 1-to-9 ratio is what is guided, what the guidance is offering from MDE or MDH, I can't remember who it is. And I think the next dial turn up from that would be 1-to-19 for a closed group of 20. Right? Is that what everyone's understanding in terms of numbers, sizes of groups?
Say that again, Sarah.
Okay, so there's a Department of Health, or I can't remember if it was Department of Health or Department of Ed. The governor issued a guidance document for summer youth programming.
Okay.
And in it, it describes pretty plainly guidance for schools and other youth program organizers around how to do it as safely as possible. And that just clearly outlines that groups should be organized in what they call pods of 10 that are isolated, that function in a building in isolation from other groups, right? And so staggered start, staggered stop, staggered bathroom use with cleaning in between, all this stuff. And if they mix with other groups, then that has to all get documented, and it's kind of a no-no. It's definitely a no-no, et cetera. So if you haven't looked at that, I thought that was super interesting to read. Edina doesn't do any summer programming. I'm sorry, any summer ECFE. They do some early learning programming. Which is, I just learned today, is all going either canceled or going online with pre-recorded videos and then Seesaw interactive stuff, but nothing synchronous. So anyway, the next dial turn up from that would be 1-to-20 or 1-to-19. So for a pod of 20. And my hunch is that that's as good as it's going to get before the fall, if we don't even ratchet back into more tightly closed, because if there's a surge in July. So I'm totally speculating right now, but there's like no way we're going to go back to sorry, not real. I didn't mean to say that. To the way it was last fall. Mm-hmm. And I think the best we can hope for is like pods of 20 at the most together. And I don't see how we do like parent-child time like economic feasibility of having just 8 dyads or something, which would be 16 people plus all the professionals in the room for a parent-child together. Like I think I'm feeling really concerned that it's not even maybe feasible or cost effective for districts to offer it. So I'd be curious if you have other thoughts.
Well, especially if there's distancing requirements within that,
right?
Because there's no way.
We also talked about the ages, that
Mhm.
even putting 2 toddlers in a room,
Mhm.
they mouth things. And so that those numbers, you know, even if there were guidelines that said 9, and I think those were for the school agers, what does that look like for babies, toddlers?
I think it's hard. It's hard, you know, like Nikki said, we had those 3 scenarios to take a look at. And I think we can do some problem solving in kind of look at it creatively, but I do think it is difficult for everybody in this, not just early childhood or ECFE, because things change so much and you just don't know. So you make your decisions based on whatever the parameters are at this time. I guess at least it's a start, and then as it changes, you know, you have a base, and then maybe tweak it a little bit. But it's difficult to think about those things.
Especially when we're a program that has to market.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like K through 12 is a whole different ball game because they don't need to market. Where we have to market, so we need to kind of know what we're doing sooner than later in order to market. So that's where I think it even gets more difficult, not having those decisions.
Right.
I have a smaller group to work with, of course, but I took going back to normal off the table for our planning, because if that happens, whatever marketing we do will have already gone out for something else. And, you know, we could jump back into that easily if we had to, but it's figuring out the other stuff that's so challenging.
What are people's thoughts about building and creating relationships, you know, in a virtual format when you have perhaps never ever met the group members? And with that said, maintaining the integrity of our program. So 3 components: the parent-child interaction piece, early childhood, and parent and family education.
It
At
seems to
first-
me like it might be easiest to connect with the people you already have those relationships for. And it seems like a lot of our early or learning families have been in the program. I think it's going to be trickier to market and reach new people by this other type of formatting.
So I actually convened a class after spring break, one adult only class. It was a book study, and they had all registered, you know, since last September for it. And I just emailed them before spring break, and I was like, hey, guess what? We're going online. Looking forward to meeting you. And I convened the group, and that was it's possible to do. It was a really engaged group of parents, and I feel like for many of them, they felt like it was the one thing they were doing for their own, like, sort of advancement, or like, nope, I am doing this out of my face. Now, these are parents of older kids, so they could be like, you have to wait. But it can be done. I'm encouraged by that. And that group wants to continue this summer, actually. So that's another thing. But for the fall, for parents of young kids, I have a lot of questions about how best to support them.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think one of the reasons we were able to continue through the end of the school year, with our ECFE parenting piece and the parent-child interaction time was because they were really looking forward to seeing each other. The group had been together since September, and there was real value in that. I did have some parents at the end really share, I miss it's not the same as when we are actually there. And they weren't just talking about their child getting the early childhood experience, you know, which, you know, they weren't with the other children. We all know that's the need when we're working on that area of development, but they really did miss being together. It wasn't the same, you know.
So we had the week The week before we went home, or the week we went home was our last programming from our winter quarter. We have 3 quarters and they sign up each time. So it's not the same families that you have all year round. So we were getting new families. Now, a lot of them, just because you've been teaching or whatever. But I have had a handful of new families, like with first experience to ECFE that have kind of stuck with it. And I think are getting a taste of what it might look like to be in a group. I don't know, Susan, have you had some new families that have stuck with it too? Because we haven't really talked about that.
I have to think. Not very many. I didn't have very many brand new families anyway that actually, once they found out that it was going to be, just all done online, they actually decided to drop off.
Yeah, I had a lot of that happen. Too.
Yeah. I almost feel like that it's maybe not, like even before we went to distance learning, there were families that came to ECFE and there were parents you could just tell that really enjoyed the interaction part of ECFE more than the parent education.
Yeah.
And there were parents that enjoyed the parent education component more than the interaction part. And so when it comes to distance learning, it's those parents who enjoy the parent education part of it that I feel like have stuck with it, or even decided to stay signed up for spring once they found out that there would be no really, in-person component for their kids. So I guess we're struggling to figure out, like for fall, how to do it so we can bring some of those families back that enjoy the interaction piece.
For me in Robbinsdale, I think my conundrum was timing, because the parent-child interaction piece and the circle time, I had 8 to 10 families out of the 10 for pretty much every single group. They all came. We held it at the time that they were scheduled. The issue was that they couldn't talk at that time and be separated from their kids, and can we have group over nap time? And then when some of my groups, 3, did that, so we had this split schedule. And some groups really, really attended, and some groups, I lost them. They dropped off. And so I also, like Susan, what you're saying, like, how do we offer, is it something that we need to split apart within the same group? Because I just keep thinking, but ECFE, it is all of these components. And so I don't want to say, okay, you're signing up for only PE, you're signing up only for parent-child interaction and circle time. I'm just having a hard time getting my head around this, but I do feel like the timing issue of this was a huge component of what happened for me in my groups.
I have three things coming to my mind. One is in response to what you're saying there, Nikki, about the timing piece. My ECFE class, because family literacy, I have adult academic schedules to think about. I have parent-child interaction schedules to think about. So we just kind of kept the schedule the same. But for the evening, my ECFE class was in the evening. So really what they did was kind of the same thing that they did at school. So like when we were at school, they would take turns coming because the other one would stay at home with the baby or something. So they kind of did the same thing. We didn't split it up. It was a night class. Three things. The other thing is, I know the other thing is, I think it's, yes, maybe if we say some groups did this and they liked it and so on, I think we have to do a comparison then because it's a different experience. So if somebody's brand new and all they've done is experienced online and they've never experienced being with one another, I don't think that's a fair comparison. You know, I know that meets different people's needs. But like Nikki says, we have to have all 3 component areas for it to be ECFE. And I don't remember what the third point was, but that's okay. I can stop talking.
So then
Oh, I know what, I remember what the third one was. The third one was just kind of, I think we're kind of sorting through these things right now, but how do we move ahead to do some designing of different possibilities within each section? How do we do that? But I'm sorry, Shelley, you were going to say
Oh
something.
no, I was just wondering, like, has there been any concrete conversations about what expectations are for fall? Like, I feel like someone said, I feel like I'm speculating. I feel like that's all we're doing is speculating, right? And I feel like it's hard because we all probably have different parameters in our school districts. You know, like we use Zoom for all of our meetings and Seesaw for the children's teachers, but a lot of people aren't allowed to use Zoom. So, you know, how do we come up with some ideas of what would work in a variety of settings, I guess?
Well, and I think it was Susan wasn't it you, Susan, that said the whole marketing piece?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Okay, yes to everything. I wanted to just share the way it worked for us. We 5 parent educators all kind of slotted into different age kids, supporting parents of different age kids. So the way that we adapted for distance learning varied by children's teacher preference and by age of kid. And then also some of our classes are single day, one day a week, and that's it. And then, but the classes that I happen to support as a parent ed are classes where children come more than one day, but parents just come one day for parenting. And so already with that sort of class where the kids are coming every day, but the parents are only coming one day, there are these 2 lanes of like kind of support and communication that are ongoing. The early childhood teacher is kind of every day touching the child, right? But I'm just coming in once a week, like on a different schedule. Sorry, Shelley?
What are they using? Like, what are the for?
Right, so the early childhood teachers went right away to Seesaw.
Okay.
Which our district was kind enough to upgrade from the free version due to COVID. So that was great. And they did a daily video and then daily activities, and some developed it further, some kept it simple, whatever. And then I decided I didn't want to work at 8 p.m. every night. I kind of had a hunch that parents would rather gather when their kids were not underfoot for all the reasons we've already talked about, but I don't want to work at 8 every night. And I didn't want to lock into that for multiple nights per week, right? And so I just said, you know, parenting is going to be when it would have been 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And I did parenting with Google Meet, and then I did Schoology for asynchronous learning for parents, which they hardly touched. I think some of them have been looking at it, but very little like actual online discussion back and forth, asynchronous discussion. And then more recently, the early childhood teacher has been popping into my classes on the front end just to give the kids a little social interaction, because it's a big concern of parents that their children are not having synchronous interactions with other kids. So we've been trying to meet that need. So it's kind of evolved over time.
Yeah.
So if I were to design it from scratch today, I'd have to think about all of that and everything we've learned, and I don't know what I would decide. Because it is so nice. It has been really nice to add the kids back into the front end of that parenting time for a little song and a hello, and they get better at it too. They chit chat.
Sarah, what do you think? Shelley, I think you do it at the beginning, but
yeah.
I'm wondering, we've played in my classes, we've played around with it by just parents at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
And then we call, because I feel like they can get them kind of settled with another caregiver.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then we call them in at the very end. It's kind of like this treat that they get to come in at the end. That our early childhood teachers are actually sitting through the entire discussion with us.
Yeah.
And then they lead just a very, very short circle time at the end. It's maybe 2 to 3, maybe a lap ride, maybe a hello song, a lap ride, and a goodbye song. It's very short, but the children seem to really enjoy it and look forward to it.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering, what do you think about at the end?
I have 2 questions about that. So the early childhood teacher then is in like the circle of trust with all the parents all of a sudden?
Yes.
And how does that go?
That for me personally, I've loved it. And I think like a couple of topics I've done, I've asked the early childhood teacher to share like on literacy, and like this week we did open-ended play. And so, you know, they shared some perspective from an early childhood teachers. And I think the parents have really liked that.
Yeah.
And I think Susan, you know, having it at the end might be a good idea, because I have parents or kids in my meetings the whole time pretty much.
Yeah.
Right. So
And we
once
do-
it's hard to like, without using a screen for the kid, quite frankly,
Absolutely.
it's hard to separate and get
Yeah.
them to do something.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've ever had, I mean, I think I have like 9 classes. I have never had one that doesn't have kids in it, you
Right.
know? So, you know, that would be something to talk about for next year as well, kind of structuring that. I think at the beginning of this, we're surviving, and now we're learning more, you know, about what might be a better perspective to use. Or
Yeah.
I think it depends on the time of the class though, because
Absolutely,
ours
yeah.
was a night class. So we started with the kids, and the children's teacher did a very nice
Yep.
parent-child interaction time. And then, you know, we kind of sang a little song, and then the children knew, okay, you know, and of course this was at night, and they,
I have 2 night classes too, but
yeah. And
Wow.
so for that, I can see maybe during the day, I hear what you're saying, but
Yeah.
I suppose it depends on the time of the class.
I think that just thinking about it, just structuring it from the beginning, you know, like this is how it's going to look. And I think at the beginning, I didn't necessarily do that because I didn't know how it was going to look. And the kids have really enjoyed doing circle time. I mean, it took 2 or 3 weeks before they really got it, but now they love it. So I think structuring it into what fits for the parents in the fall, if that's what we're looking at, is a really good idea right from the beginning.
We also kind of started with 30 minutes of parent education. Like that's all we thought that we should keep parents from their children, because children need to be supervised and that kind of thing. It would be hard to keep them much longer than that. But what I've found is that our parents aren't ready to get off at 30 minutes. Like our conversation pretty much goes 45 minutes for sure. I'm wondering how long everybody else does the parent ed piece comfortably.
I wrestled with that too, duration. My own personal stamina ends at about an hour. So, and I don't have little kids I'm trying to keep alive. So, but just facilitating, it's different, right? Reading the room, like some of the things we've all done. I do the book study that I mentioned that convened after spring break. I was like, for sure, we're just going to go an hour every time, and the rest is going to be asynchronous on Schoology. And those women went 90 minutes every single week. And by the end, I about ready to fall over. But they were like, we had the chat going. We had some people speak. It was just really, really rich. And so I decided to, you know, have a cup of coffee and do it.
My class went the regular class time, sometimes a little bit longer. So ours was from 6:15 to 7:45. But again, they set it up. So, and sometimes we go a little later, and I kind of be like, you know, I want to be respectful of their time, but they were so eager to talk with one another. But again, this was an evening class. They pretty much set it up the way they normally did if they were coming to the school. Was it the most ideal way to do that? No. I mean, for what we had, I think it worked out really, really well. For a long-term thing, you know, I think parents did it because they knew it was to the end of this year. They had those close relationships. They were looking forward to that, and so on. So.
I'm thinking about the importance of relationship and how much it helped us keep the families engaged this spring. and Susan has we've talked about this in other groups, others of these groups, and it's got me wondering if I shouldn't offer like a drop-in, like independent, not affiliated with the school, but just to preserve my relationship with parents, a drop-in summer coffee hour kind of thing, sliding scale, like send me what you want to, I will convene this group at this time, and anyone from the group is welcome. Just for those, there are a couple parents that I'm more concerned about than others, in terms of having a lifeline and just someone else to talk to for a whole week. So I'm noodling that a little bit. Again, we don't do summer programming, so they don't have an option.
So when you say drop in, you would still have to know that you would send them a link.
Yeah, I would, and I would have them RSVP to let me know they were coming. I mean, I've seen this done now a couple different ways, and this year I've been doing like coffee house office hours where I just publish the link. It's to a Google Meet, and then I just have my Meet open, and I'm at my desk putzing with other stuff if nobody shows up. And it's been pretty quiet. I've had like 3 or 4 or 5 people catch me during those times. But I also don't mind the structure of having to like be at my desk doing something constructive during that time. So for the summer, I think I would ask for people to let me know if they're planning to come. And then I would give them the link.
Okay.
So that maybe I knew whether or not I had to be at my desk during that time. I don't know. I'm just noodling it.
And again, how would you market that, Sarah?
Well, that's the tricky part, isn't it? Because I'm not allowed to use my school like lists to market something like that. However, I would probably ask my coordinator if she minded if I did that, because the ECFE, like Edina, is not offering anything in the summer, so it's not competitive. I don't know. Or I could just word of mouth, Facebook. I mean, I have a personal Facebook account.
Okay.
I post a lot of my classes on.
Okay.
Well, and
One thing that I have found interesting is, I don't know if other districts use this, but there's, for lack of a better word, an organization or Peach Jar is what Robbinsdale area schools is using to deliver flyers. So it used to be that like elementary kids would come home with a Thursday packet every, or Thursday or whatever day they were doing it. And you'd open it up and there's 8 flyers in there. So a lot of paper that's getting recycled. And the district has migrated to what's called Peach Jar. And it's not Constant Contact, but it's like the district puts their flyers to the Peach Jar. And then the school itself, every school and every location has its individual Peach Jar. So that gets pushed out. And I guess I would just use the word like Constant Contact. I mean, it's enough, like each one is an individual flyer. So you could click on it and you could get all the links. But one of the things that has occurred in Robbinsdale area schools are, actually they created something new with just during the pandemic called Parents and Community. And they have been offering these sessions with various people who will facilitate them. So the parent family educators have been asked to facilitate a number of these. And I have been asked for one specific one for K through 5 and a different one for 6 through 8, or grade 6 through 8. And those flyers got then put into the Peach Jar. So like the middle schoolers got the 6 to 8, and within that, it gives a registration link like Google Docs, go ahead and fill this out, and then they will send the link. But I also want to say, so this is a little bit of a tangent to that. So one, I'm just thinking about marketing early childhood. Our program is also using Peach Jar. So that is a way that we can get information out, but it's only to the families that are already part of our program, right? And I think we're all thinking about how do we reach these families that are new. This other thing that I want to share also does not reach necessarily new families, but it is reaching the elementary school families. We do one-on-one visits, and right at the beginning of the pandemic, our director put out a Google form to all of the elementary school principals, who then circulated it within all of the elementary schools, that if they wanted a one-on-one visit with a parent family educator, they could just go ahead and click on the Google Doc or click on, a Google form. And that would then indicate to us, we get it in the responses, that somebody has requested requested a visit. And so that went out to all of the elementary schools, and that exploded for a short bit. So it says to me, like, if they continued to market that or put that up, parents just, you know, they hang on to that and they go ahead and they click on that on their own or when they want to. And then when we got that information, we just set up individual one-on-one visits with them. And for us, it was Google Meet. But somebody else said this earlier. I think Shelley, it was you that commented, like, different districts have used different things, or different districts have said no to this or that. And I was one of those districts who the district said no to Zoom because of the security issues, and we were Google Meet. But I think going through this, now that we've had some experience, we might have more opinions about what we want to advocate for. And going into fall, I don't feel anymore that I'm necessarily okay being told this is what the district is going to support. I will be advocating for, this is what I need you to support, and this is why, and this is the experience. And across the state, I think as we've had this collective experience, we have more understanding. So I don't know, do people hear things in that perhaps that you could build on this and help us within the early childhood realm? Because I keep using that thought too, Sarah. I'm noodling with all of these things, and how can we expand that?
I don't know if you saw my broadcast. You did see it? Okay, so 2:15.
15.
Yeah, 2:15, and we'll come back together as a full group. Okay? Sorry.
One thing we haven't touched on it at all, well, yeah, I guess we did a little bit, was designing a hybrid model. I mean, I think Laura, I think you brought some of that up to, or no, Sarah, I think the numbers we can have, and I don't know how to do the hybrid model. You know, some days some people come, and I know that's. Oh no. So that's one of the things we're tasked with, is what would that look like? So any ideas?
And how do you keep early ed kids away from each other? I mean, like Nikki, you said, even if you have two toddlers, right? It's like,
Yeah.
how would you even do that? They don't get it, you know? So that hybrid where some kids are coming in one day and some the other, you know, it's hard. It's hard to imagine that.
So one, this would be, okay, we're brainstorming, right? So no bad ideas. So people from the same household don't have to distance.
Right.
So maybe it's like a reverse home visit where like 2 or 3 dyads could come to the classroom for a classroom visit to play, engage with toys, get assessed by an early childhood specialist, you know, our teacher, engage with a parent educator, just all in one space, sort of by appointment, you know, one set of dyads per day. This is super labor and space intensive, but they would at least get to be in a different place with a couple of different families and have us and professionals lay eyes on the adults and the children to just assess, right, for well-being and really troubleshoot if anything is going on. Like a reverse home visit. It wouldn't be like a classroom community, but at least it would be bigger than one-to-one, like a conference. So there would be a little social interaction.
Yeah, it'd be a different setting.
It would be a different setting, getting out of the house, going to school, seeing what that feels like, you know, seeing what a locker is, you know, all of that readiness for elementary or for K. It wouldn't be what it was, but it would be better than all of us sitting in our foxholes.
Staring at a screen.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's one idea.
Yeah.
When you think of that, do you think of it as like a weekly thing or just once in a while? Like,
I mean, maybe ideally weekly. I mean, what it requires is splitting a class that would normally happen over on a day over a week, basically, right?
Yeah.
If you have a roster of, let's say, 16 families, and you did 4 families a day, and then or maybe one set of 4 in the morning and one set of 4 in the afternoon with big cleaning in between, but I don't even know how you do that. You really need like the time to let stuff settle, and I don't know.
What if you did keep, let's say that you had like your regular class, like it was, like, you know, your class list, I say. Like right now we have been hosting our circle times, but nobody has been in the room except for the children's teacher because she does it there. What if during circle time we brought in 1 or 2 families, but everybody got on? Like the whole class got on every single week, but a couple different families were actually present.
Yep. And then it changed every time who got to come. Like, it's like whose snack day it is, but it's like whose day to show up it is.
Whose real life day is it?
Whose day is it in the classroom?
Yeah, I like it. We're being nudged.
Yeah, we have 25 seconds. So yeah, that's a great start, Nikki and Sarah. It's kind of thinking outside the box, I guess, a little bit, but we have to go. We're going to be closed out, doors locked.
And I want to hear the breakup, but I got to go. I'm already a little bit late, but this has been such a pleasure and so valuable to me. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, Sarah.
Good to see you all.
For the emailed activities that we were sending every week. And it went to preschool families who are enrolled in our the Wilmer Public School preschool programs, but also all our ECFE families.
So how many packets did they get during
that one? But I sent out, so what we did in Wilmer was we did our Zoom classes with our regular Monday, Wednesday groups, and then a few other groups. I sent home twice a week through email. I would send home activities, so activity links, things like that they could either print off or easily do at home. And I also sent home a lesson plan that went along with it and had activities they could do at home. The activity bag was just a one-time thing. Just because it was so difficult. I don't know about your school districts, but we really couldn't go back into our building. And if we did, it was a rigmarole. And I live about 25 miles away from the school district, so I just haven't bothered with that whole piece. That's why I say if we do a hybrid next year, we can at least be in the classrooms to be doing some prepping and stuff. I think it'd be much easier because then I did initially the first, when we had those planning days before we were not allowed back in the building, I did do a couple mail packets that went home with families. But otherwise, a lot of it was just online and stuff. But, and I know, like I said before, that was one of the things our families on the advisory committee talked about was that, if that's the case for next fall, if things could be sent home more so. So something to think about.
Well, welcome back, everyone. It was just so wonderful to pop into your groups and just spend some time listening to the different conversations that you're having, and you clearly covered the waterfront. So hopefully, those of you who are recording, you can probably stop your recording, and then when you close out of Zoom, you should